Welcome to Podnutz Pro, episode number 12, the show where we take you from residential computer repair and tech support to small business and enterprise IT support. A lot of people want to take the step, but they don't know how, and that's what the show's about. That's what we're here for. And we do it with the help of two experts in the field. Matt Rainey from ahcomputers.com. What up, Matt?
Hey Steve, how you doing?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Oh, good. Doing good.
Good. That's good.
All the sickness has been gone for a while, so
Oh, good. Yeah,
that makes everything good.
good. You got color back.
You got color back.
You look good. Lalo Nunez from BetterPCTech.com. Hey, Lalo.
Yo, what's up? What's going on?
Not much. What's going on with you?
Football's over and baseball's right around the corner, so I'm good.
Hey, man, why don't you got a new website up. Why don't you plug that real quick?
Sure. The site just launched last week. Is BetterPCTech.com. Check it out. There's a video and intro there. I go over a couple of scripts and different ways to automate a couple of tasks that people spend a lot of time on. Cover Windows updates, log me in, and my bytes, a bunch of different tasks. And for those who've already bought the videos, I greatly appreciate it. You guys have given me tons of comments and compliments. So again, it feels good. Appreciate it.
Awesome. And if anybody does, and you should, anybody who buys the product, let Lalo know. Give him feedback on what you think, and we could, send testimonials in. We could post them up on the site if we have your permission, and
Right.
that'd be great.
And I had switched over from GoDaddy to HostGator. I had some small issues with GoDaddy, so I switched it up.
Yeah, go HostGator.
Go HostGator.
Podnuts.com/HostGator, if anybody's thinking about HostGator.
And that's where I signed up.
There we go. Nice, thanks. All right.
Hey Steve, yeah, I want to say I bought the videos also, and I think they're great. Not only with the stuff that it goes over step by step, but you can use those tools to do other things. You may not have realized what things you may be able to do. So he has a tool for the log me in and a tool for other things, but you can use those tools to do other things, and that opens up the possibilities for that kind of stuff too.
I
Once you
agree.
realize what you're not doing.
I know exactly what you're saying. I agree. I was telling him kind of the same thing earlier. The tools that he uses to create some of the products, the possibilities are endless as far as what you can do to automate things. I think it's cool.
Right.
Yep.
That's a good point. And I've been doing this for a little bit over the 12 years. And if I can do it quicker, better, and faster, I mean, there's stuff now that is happening at my daytime job that is just being automated. I don't have to be there or remotely log in, so it's pretty sweet.
It's very sweet. Matt, what do you want to talk about this week?
Well, we got something this week that it starts off. It's more of a basic topic, which is what we're trying to do for people making the switch. So what we're going to talk about this week is picking your IP scheme when you're setting up a new network. What happens? What your decision affects when you pick an IP scheme, and how that interacts with like DHCP and some other things.
Sounds geeky. Let's get into it.
We'll keep it hopefully a little basic, but we'll see. So when you have a networking, of course, your IP scheme, your 192.168 dot something, you're going to have to pick that. When you installing your server, one of the first screens you're going to get is, or not one of the first, but one of the screens you're going to get is what's your IP address, what's your scheme. And you might think you're just going to put in something and just gloss over it and not give it a second thought, and you just continue on in your little next wizardry. But you need to take some time and put some thought into what IP scheme you're going to pick. By default, Windows Small Business Server likes to do, I think it's 192.168.1.1. It wants to give your router .1, and it wants to give your server. It wants you to be on that network. Okay. Now, when you do that, you have to realize that's what's default, but that's not recommended. So, surprisingly, the default is not what you should do in this case.
Recommended why?
Okay. Well, the main reason is a lot of home Linksys routers, D-Link routers, they're all going to default to the .1.x or .0.x network.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to stay away from those two definitely.
I see.
And the main reason is if you just say you pick your server as 1.1, okay? Pretty common. That's what most people do. Um, what's going to happen eventually is somebody is going to plug in a Linksys router, you know, or a D-Link router or something into the network, and it's going to conflict with your IP scheme. And a lot of times the user has no idea what they're doing. They might see a router and think it's a switch. So they want to add another printer in their office, network printer. They plug in the router, they plug in the switch. Now they've expanded their capability of what they can plug in. But now this router is going to conflict with your server.
Exactly.
So you're going to have a lot of conflicts if you have it on that network. And it's not even physical devices that you're going to plug in. Let's say somebody's at home working on their notebook. Their router by default is 1.1 for the router, and it's dishing out, let's say they got 1.100 for their notebook computer. They got this lease last night, so depending on how their network is set, their lease may be good for a week, okay? Which means it's going to keep that number until a new one was requested, or 3.5 days, halfway when your DHCP lease is up, it tries to renew its IP address. So if you get an address of 1.100 at night, now you go to your office and plug it in, you still got 1.100. So when you plug that into your network, you could cause a conflict with another machine or device that has that network.
And also what Matt's saying, I used to run an office where it was a remote site, and the one day they had called me up and they said that no one could get online. There's about 30-some people. So everybody was just brought down. Couldn't find out someone bought a router, wanted to be wireless for a few minutes, and they actually plugged in the router and brought everyone down, because what Matt is saying, the router was issuing IP addresses along with the server. I mean, it brought all 30 people down for hours because some guy wanted to plug in a router. It happens.
Yeah, and another reason is, let's say somebody does plug in a router, which is, pretty common by mistake. They, it's not their thing. They don't know. So they can't really fault them. But they plug in a 1.1 and it's probably got DHCP enabled, because the default on these routers is to enable DHCP. So it starts giving out IP addresses. Now, the small business server, when it detects another DHCP server on the network, it shuts itself down.
Really?
Because yes, small business server will shut down. So if you're troubleshooting something with having connectivity, you're going to do an IP config. Okay, well, you do an IP config to say, well, I'm 192.168.1.60. And you think, okay, well, that's fine. That's the right network. Okay. But then if you don't look close enough, you may not realize it's not your server giving out the IP address. If you don't do an IP config /all and see the IP address of the DHCP server, you're not going to see that it's not the server. So if you have another network, and when you're picking the number, we say stay away from 0.1 or 1.1 or whatever. Pick some. I like to pick a number and just stick with it for all my networks. It makes it easy. So let's say and you can pick whatever you want. Your favorite number. If your favorite number is 72.
32.
Okay, 32.
That was Steve Carlton's number.
Okay, so you can do 192.168.32. something, and now that's your network. Okay, so now if you know your IP scheme is 32. something, and somebody calls with an issue with connectivity, and you have to do IP config, and they get 1.50, you know something's wrong.
Exactly.
Because they should not be on that network.
And
so,
that tool that you're saying, IP config /all, that's the first thing I do every single time, and 8 out of 10 times you will see what the problem is. It has your IP address, default gateway, your DHCP. It has all the information that you know to start troubleshooting.
Yep. So pick a different network. The main reason is for conflicts. Well, there's two main reasons. One of the main reasons is you want to avoid conflicts with other devices that are plugged in. The second main reason is if you're going to do a VPN connection to another office, another branch, a vendor site, or whatever, you may think, well, this is a small network. They've only got 5 computers. I don't need to worry about a VPN. But you really should. Let's say you buy a software package, and this vendor says, okay, in order to support you, we have to have a VPN to your network. And they're going to ask you, what's your IP subnet? Well, my subnet is 1.1. is 1.x, and they're gonna say, oh no, you're gonna have to change that because one, they're not gonna allow that. Even if they did, I'm sure somebody else already has that subnet. Because the way VPNs work is both sides of the VPN have to have different subnets for the traffic to know where to go. So if you've got one branch office that's on, let's say they're on 32.x, okay? And they're the main office. So everyone that connects to them has to be something other than 32.x. And all of the branch offices have to be different from each other.
Okay.
So if you're 1.x, of course, somebody probably already has that. They're going to tell you, no, you can't have that here. Use 47.x instead. So now you've got to go and you've got a little job, depending on how many computers you have. You've got to go around and change all your subnet over to what this is. Now, if you have something that's off, like 72 or 71, they may say, okay, good, that one's not being used. You can keep using that. So it may save you some work down the road if you're going to eventually have some kind of VPN with somebody. And you really can't plan that.
But
Can't say I'm never going to have it.
But Lamat's saying it would save you a lot of work if you can make yours a little bit different. I had an office where the corporate office wanted to build a VPN, the tunnel, but some other sister company had my same IP addressing scheme. They had 2,000 more users, so they bumped me off. So they told me I had to change my IP addressing scheme. So for over a week, I had to plan changing IP addresses for 12 servers, for email, for web servers, for file servers. Then I had to change anything that had an static IP address on my printers. I mean, it was just the biggest ordeal in the world. And if whoever had set up that network originally had set up a different IP scheme, I would have never had to even do that. So,
was it dumb luck that you had picked the same one, or was it just it's pretty?
And I had picked 172.181. I think 10.1, and they were also 10.x. So
I see.
They forced me to bump out, and it was just a pain.
Sucks. You should have picked 32.
Yeah. Popular ones are 1.x, 10.x, 100.x. Because they're pretty easy.
Right.
So kind of avoid the 110, 100. That's usually what they're going to pick.
Right.
If they're trying to be creative and not pick one. But
right.
1 and 0, definitely the worst. Now, Lalo, another thing I want to talk about, some of my notes, is I had the same issue about a month ago. I had a pretty big company that their main office was requiring a VPN, and they said, here, use. They gave me a subnet to use, and they said, use it. And the same thing happened. I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. I've got to go change all the servers. You got 20 IP printers, you've got DVRs,
Exactly.
you've got access points, you've got everything. And they're on DHCP, most of them, but it's still, you've got to go recreate everything, recreate the reservations, recreate this. So the router that I had a better solution.
Okay.
And it was a 5-minute fix. I did it all in 5 minutes. So the router that I had could do a 1-to-1 NAT.
Yes, that's what I was gonna say.
So in this router, let's say they told me to be 209 dot something. So in my router, if you've got a good router, we talked about business routers before. If you have a good router, you can do what's called a 1-to-1 NAT. Basically, I can tell their side that all my computers are 209 dot something. So if they ping 209.1 from their side, it'll just map to, let's say, if I have 1.1, it'll map to 1.1. 209.10 maps to 1.10. They don't even know that I didn't change the IP scheme. So this was a matter of one setting in my router instead of changing all the IP scheme on the whole network.
And that's amazing. And I wish that I would have known that. I think the engineer tried doing that, but it was something extremely oddball where it was a secure VPN tunnel. On top of that, there was a Cisco VPN client, and I had to actually get a block of public IPs, but that's beyond the scope of the show. But we couldn't do that. It sucked. But
yeah, see, most of ours are site to site,
okay,
not hardware to hardware.
Right.
So hardware to hardware was fine because it just says, when it builds a tunnel, it says, here's my public IP, here's my shared key, and it just thinks that 209 dot something is my traffic. So that saved a lot of work. So before it may be a good time if they don't have a good router. Let's say they're on a Linksys router or a D-Link router, and they've got enough users where this could, let's say it might take you 7 hours
Right.
to go through and change all the servers, test everything. You might want to put that money toward a better router. The client's going to spend the money anyway. Get them a good router. They're going to benefit from more than just this capability of doing the one-to-one NAP, but now they have a better hardware, better security. Use that time more wisely. You can still bill because you've still got to configure the router and do things. You're not losing billable time. It's just a lot easier to support.
Oh yes, and then if your small business expands, then you can buy a lot of these same routers that have a VPN tunnel. So you can tell the client, we can build 3 more offices. Just buy these the routers, and we can just hook you up. So.
Yep. And, I wasn't going to talk about it, but a VPN, it's more common nowadays. You see it a lot more now than you used to. Unfortunately, some of the stuff we see VPNs for are not what they're designed for. I had a customer who just told me, we need a VPN. And I asked them why they wanted a VPN, and they just said they needed it. I said, well, that's fine. You've already got the routers in place because we already had business routers. So it's just a quick setup, 5-minute thing to create the tunnel. And once it was done, they could, I could ping back and forth, told them, okay, your VPN's up between these 2 offices. And I get a call, things are running slow is what they're reporting. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to run things like Peachtree and AutoCAD across the VPN, meaning the Peachtree files and the AutoCAD files run a server in the main office, and they're trying to pull AutoCAD drawings across and Peachtree files across.
Why can't you do that, Matt? VPNs just can't go that fast, or?
It's right. It's too slow. It's too slow. It's slower than the internet. However slow the internet is,
really,
it's slower than that.
Also, yes. Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
It's not using the whole. It's a tunnel. It's not using all the bandwidth of the internet. So,
I'm sorry, Matt. Then on top of that, with the VPN, a lot of it use encryption, and if you encrypt any traffic, it's gonna slow it down because it has to encrypt and decrypt that traffic through the tunnel. Sorry, Matt.
That's right. Can't you expand the size though, of the tunnel to allow more bandwidth, or it's not a variable, not adjustable?
Well, I mean, if their bandwidth at one office is 5 meg down and 1 meg up, that's the absolute most bandwidth you're going to get. And yeah, when you're trying to transfer an AutoCAD drawing that's 90 megs across the tunnel, this just doesn't work very well. So where the VPNs come in great for is for a lot of web-based stuff. If you're running or if you're doing a terminal server connection, or if you got a website hosted on your servers and you want to do web-based operations, it works good for that kind of stuff. Authentication, Outlook, web access, But for things that are going to be working with big files, I don't recommend it at all. And I try and talk them out of that. So it all depends on what they're going to use it for. But in the end, the VPNs just have to be on different subnets, because when you have a default gateway, let's say that your router is your default gateway. So if you have everything goes like your default gateway, but if you're, as 192.168.209. something is not routable, okay? If your network is 1. something and you try and send them to the 209. something, your router won't know what to do with it. It'll say, no, that's not my IP scheme, and you can't go across the internet, so you're just going to go away. So the VPN says, oh, you're 209? Okay, you're going through this virtual tunnel this way, and it can send the traffic that way. That's why they all have to be on different subnets for this to work.
Gotcha.
Now, another thing when you're picking the subnet mask on your small business server, a lot of the wizards in small business server like for you to be on a class C. So subnet mask of 255.255.255.0. Okay, a lot of these wizards aren't going to work correctly if you're doing like 255.255.0.0. If you're on that class, things don't work very well. You're going to have some weird errors. Things just won't work. So you want to stick to a class C network on the small business server. Okay. Now, Windows server, it's fine. Small business server is more menu wizard driven, and And really, you need to use the Wizards and Small Business Server for things to work right, and it wants a Class C network.
Okay.
So just remember that when you're picking your scheme as well. It likes 1.1, but don't use it. And when you're picking out your IP scheme, you want to keep it consistent across your different networks that you support. You may like your servers to have low numbers, your router may, high number. So you might like your servers to be .1 through .10. You might like your router to always be .254. So whatever you are comfortable with, I would duplicate that on different networks, just so right off the bat. Okay, I know your router should be 32.254.
Exactly.
I know your server should be 32.1. You don't want to have to, when you start supporting, 50, 100 clients, you don't want to have to remember, okay, what are you again? It just makes you seem, or you are more efficient. But of course, when you're talking to your customers, right away, okay, your server should be 32.1. Let's see if we can ping that.
Right. Cool.
Now, when you're doing your DHCP scope, that's another thing when you're setting up your server. I see a lot of people who put the DHCP scope really, really small. They think, well, I've got 10 computers, so I'm going to have my DHCP range, and the range is what IP addresses can be given out. They may say, I'm going to give out 100 to 150. So your server can only give out 50 addresses. Okay.
Right.
That's a mistake.
Why even limit it? I don't understand why.
Well, exactly why limit it. If you can give out, let's say your server's .1 and your router's .254, that's 252 addresses you can give out. So what I like to do is I like to give the range of the whole thing. My DHCP scope is .1 to .254. Okay. And then if you want to limit it, I'm going to limit it by default. I'm going to do an exclusion, which means my scope is the whole subnet, but I'm going to exclude certain IPs from being allowed to be given out. I'll definitely do an exclusion for .1 through .10 because that's my servers. Okay. And I usually do an exclusion for .200 to .254. So that means I'm giving out now .11 to .199.
Okay.
And that's plenty of addresses. Now you can create more exclusions if you want to, because it's easy to delete an exclusion. It's not as easy to delete your whole scope and have to redo it to have more addresses.
Okay.
Now, a problem with setting it real low is one people don't realize nowadays, especially if you have wireless, everybody's phone's going to connect. So if you got 10 computers, you're going to have 10 phones. You're going to have a lot of other things that are connecting. People come in with their personal notebook. They keep an address. So I've seen plenty of times where they might have 5 computers, but I'm giving out 30 IPs.
Okay.
So and if a bigger company with 50 users, they've got 50 phones. Now you've got 100 addresses to give out. So these DHCP scopes, a lot of times, if you've limited it at the beginning, it causes a problem later on. So like I say, and reservations, the only thing static we should be having on a network is the servers and your router. That's the only thing that should be physically set inside the machine or the device.
Okay.
I see a lot of times where I'm not sure why, printers, computers, they're giving static IP addresses. Those should always be reservations. And I think we've talked about it before, but if you have a printer that's on the network, you can assign it a reservation so it's always getting the same IP address. And I always do my reservations. If I've excluded .200 to .254, I give my reservations out in that span. So I might give my printers, I may start them at .220. My next printer is going to be 221, 222. And that's just the IPs that I usually pick. But you can do whatever you're comfortable with,
right?
Whatever you prefer.
And the reservations are done by MAC address. So when your machine first turns on, it looks for a DHCP server, and the DHCP server says, okay, you're this MAC address, so you are .100 because you were part of the reservation.
Yeah, Matt. Oh, I thought we lost you for a second.
Yeah, I did cut off for a second.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so yeah, I think he said, yeah, reservations are for outside the scope, and leave the scope for people who are on DHCP without reservations.
Now, Steve had asked a question: who would limit their scope? I've been part of companies where the plan was to limit the scope so no unauthorized devices could get on the network. So if Bob brought his, his laptop in, it wouldn't grab an IP address. That was the method years ago to get that done. Now, with these switches, they're much more smarter and they can handle that capability, but that's not done much anymore.
Yeah, and if you want to
Okay.
limit who people not connecting, of course you can set wireless restrictions. You can, only assign certain MAC addresses to connect. Excuse me. But the best way to not have people connect to your network with their home computers is leave it unplugged at the switch. Don't have ports all over the office that are plugged in. So if they plug it into the wall, there's nothing there.
Yep. Sorry, Matt. Nice
Where do we
mute,
get?
nice mute action, by the way, on the call.
Oh,
I know, I seen that.
you're welcome.
Like a ninja.
It's beautiful. Well done.
I didn't think anybody wanted to hear that.
That's all right. All right.
Yeah, so what was I just saying?
About ports not being hot to
Yeah,
the patch panel.
That's the security. Secure the ports. If you don't want them using them, don't have them plugged in.
Now,
You know.
now what happens now? And then Bob says, "Okay, I got the one port. I'm gonna go to CompUSA and buy me a 4-port switch and put it underneath my desk, and no one will ever know." Now, you will know if you pay attention to your logs. You'll see this oddball traffic coming from a switch, and you'll know it. But you'll be surprised that remote offices that I would go to, that folks will buy 4-port like the switches and put it underneath their desk.
Really?
So
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I would do like the repo man. I would just take it away.
Yeah, that does happen, and that's hard to, that's hard to watch, especially if you're doing work for this company. You're not there every day, so you're
Yeah.
not, if you're doing offsite support, you're not going to see that much. Now, somebody asked in the chat, I was going to get to it, why reservation is better than static. If you have reservations set for all these printers and access points and DVRs and all of your stuff that's connecting to the network, you can easily go into your DHCP console and see what addresses are being used. If you have a lot of things assigned by static, unless you got it written down somewhere, what IP is assigned to which device, it's not readily available.
That is true, and especially if the one day partake in a larger the network, that list can get long, and then so do it all through the scope, because if you haven't looked inside the DHCP scope, it's kind of neat. It shows you all the IP addresses that are being used and which ones are part of the DHCP scope and which ones are part of the reservation. I mean, it's all there for you.
It's in
Right.
the router?
It's on the server
Okay.
when you launch DHCP Manager.
Gotcha.
Right, and just as a quick note, I mean, DHCP in a small business server, or in my case, any Windows network, the DHCP server should be the Windows server, just for Active Directory to work right and for all the service records, because there's more things than just IP addresses. There's service records and things that need to be there for DNS to work correctly.
Cool.
So, don't use the router if you have a
Right.
server.
Right.
Now, one more thing, I've had this happen a few times where, and this actually happened a while back. I got a call from somebody, they couldn't connect to their server, and the thing it told me is on the server screen, it said IP address conflict. This is on the server screen.
Right.
So, and there was a small network, and it was set to 1.1 for the server. This is not something that we set up. So I went out there. And when you get an IP conflict in the event logs, it's going to tell you the MAC address of the conflicting machine.
Yes.
Now that may or may not be helpful to you, but I'll cover something in a second with that. So I had an IP conflict somewhere, and I don't know where. And this particular office had two physical buildings connected with a fiber line. So I told him, I said, look, somebody plugged something in. We need to find it. Most likely it's somebody. See, when you get a conflict notice on the server,
Yeah.
that same conflict pops up on the other computer too.
Okay.
So somebody else somewhere got, if it's a computer, someone else got that notification. Now, if it was a router or something else, they're not going to get it. But if it's a
Right.
computer from home, they're going to get it the same notice. So, we're going around asking everybody, did you plug in something new today? No, no, no. Nobody plugged anything in. So in the end, I had to actually change the server's IP address. I went to, I think it was 1.3 on this server.
Okay.
And I could still ping one to this day. I can still ping 1.1 and nobody has any idea what it is. So somebody plugged in something somewhere. But you know what? I have a new tool I want to go try next time I'm out there. I found this tool. It's like Angry IP Scanner. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Angry
program.
IP scanner.
Yeah, so you load this tool onto any computer and you just tell it scan the network.
Great
And
tool.
it'll go out and scan look for all the live and dead IPs. But I found a tool and I don't remember the name of it. It's on my iPad. If you can connect wireless to the network, not only does it tell you all the IPs in use, it looks up the MAC address and it tells you what vendor is mapped to that MAC address.
Huh.
So it'll tell you, here's the IP, here's the MAC address, and that MAC address belongs to Cisco or it belongs to HP.
You said it's an iPad app?
It's an iPad app.
What do you take your iPad when you go out to jobs?
Yeah, I usually have it with me. Yeah. So, and there's other programs that do this I've seen, but this is a real cool, really fast device from on the iPad. But there's lots of programs if you have a notebook, that you can do this. Some are easy to use, some are more difficult. But if you can find one of these programs that that resolve MAC addresses to vendors, that's going to help you a lot to track down rogue IPs.
Right, and how it identifies the vendor is in the MAC address. The first six, they're not bytes, but the first half of the MAC address identifies the vendor. So that's how it obtains that information.
Huh.
Yeah. So, and I've actually had to track down things, and through DHCP, you might be able to find it easy too, because in that event log, it gives you the MAC address. So sometimes what happens is if it's somebody from home and they've got 1.50 and they get an IP conflict, they're probably just going to click OK and close it and not give it a second thought. So when you ask, did anybody get a pop-up? Really, they may not remember. It's just another pop-up that they get and they closed it. So what happens is they get a conflict, then the computer tries to get another IP. Then it does a DHCP request and it gets another IP address. Okay?
Yeah.
So everything works fine. Usually everything works fine because the server now says, okay, that IP's gone. The error stays up until you close it, but it's gone. It doesn't have a problem anymore. So sometimes you can look in the event log, get the offending MAC address, then you go look in DHCP and find that MAC address, and you can kind of tell who it was. And that way, it's a good opportunity to say, find out what happened. Did you connect at a coffee shop? Is this your house? Kind of help to prevent it again. If you can track down who it was.
Right.
Or one of the first steps I would tell people when they'll call me up, I'll have them do an IP config, release and renew. Again, almost every time it would go ahead and obtain a new IP address from the DHCP server, and then they were good. And that's also one of the first things you want to try.
Yep. And all this, again, usually, all these conflicts can be avoided if you just don't use those common subnets. That's going to eliminate a lot of support calls. Now, you may not want to eliminate support calls, but believe me, if you're supporting businesses, you're going to have enough support calls with real problems and not conflicts like this. This, to me, is the kind of thing, if you can avoid it, it just overall makes things run smoother. And when things run smoother and less problems, it looks better for you. They don't have problems. But if you get a bunch of little problems like conflicts here and there, it just, to the customer, might seem like they're always getting some kind of error message,
Right.
So it's just something to avoid for things to run smoother. And it's just as simple as picking a different subnet mask when you're installing your network. I'm
Good.
sorry, it's a different subnet.
Right.
So,
Sounds
and
good.
and when things happen later on, it's just VPNs, because it's not fun. I've had to do it before. If they don't have a good router and they do a different subnet, it's not that fun for you to have to go change everything for the customer. They have to have downtime. You have to go do this,
Right. Right.
It's just less downtime.
And it
Yeah.
happens, and like at first it could be like the admin was small business, but then they buy a different company, and now you have to build a VPN. Like I said, I got a phone call one day because we were part of some other the company, and they had 2,000 more folks than I did, and they said, "Well, you got to change your IP addressing scheme," and it sucked for a week. No, I mean, I could think about it. I had 12 servers, all type of devices. They all had their own IP addresses. So all these PCs, which I had about 300, 350, they all knew about this, about the servers and the equipment. So now I have to change everything all around, and I mean, it just becomes.
Could it have been avoided?
If the other company, if one of us would have changed a different IP scheme, then yeah. But, or how Matt had mentioned a little bit earlier, I can do on NAT to NAT, but we can cover that on a different show. But I couldn't do that because I had to use public IPs. So they had to be different, and
I see.
because there's a program that that they use that would have to look at your system and identify a public IP. It was some type of secure thing that I won't get into. It was a bunch of crap, you ask me, but sucked for a week.
It does suck.
Now, one thing, if I go into a network and that maybe I'm not familiar with, or it's been, sometimes users want to administer their own things, and if a vendor goes in and just sets a static IP, it happens. Before you give any reservation, if I'm putting a new printer up and I'm doing a reservation for, like, say 230 for a printer, that's what I want to give it. A simple thing, just ping the IP address that you want to give it before you assign it.
Yes, ping it. You will bring stuff down. You
Because
will learn the hard
right,
way.
right, it does happen. I'll look in DHCP. Things happen. If you give a reservation for this IP address and someone else is already using it somewhere else, you're going to cause conflicts. You're going to have issues. So, a real simple step, even if you're sure it's not being used, before you give a reservation or assign a static IP address for some reason, just ping it first. Make sure you don't get any replies.
Yes.
Quick step to avoid a problem.
And like I said, and I've been doing this for about 12 years. A few months ago, for my daytime job, I was testing a product. So I named the bot what I thought was a unique name. So I'm testing stuff. Everything works fine. And I see that the other folks, I mean, they're going nuts. Like, phones are going off the hook, and I have no idea why. And one night, guy was like, do you have an HP bot named something? I'm like, yeah. I named it the same name as a server, and I brought like 100 people down. So yeah, I bought everybody some Waffle House coffee that day.
Waffle. That made up for it.
Yeah, it did. So, but if I would have just done a ping, like Matt said, with a ping, I would have seen a reply back, and that would have told me I can't use that name. You will bring stuff down, and you'll learn the hard way, like I did.
Gotcha.
That's the best way to learn, the hard way,
Yeah.
because you usually don't forget those.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
No, I got one story. It was an interesting story. I had a few tools that might help some people out. It's our server down story of the show.
Server down.
Yep, I get these every day, so I'll share one.
I'm gonna make a little graphic when we get to this part. Just flash it up on the screen. Server down.
Now, this was a real server down. This wasn't a
False
fake
alarm.
call.
Okay.
Yeah. So they called server down. They said mail was down because they could still connect to their network shares. So I logged in, and sure enough, C drive was full on the server. Exchange was dismounted, no free space. So the first thing I usually do when I see this is I check those active sync log files that we had talked about and delete those. And that freed up 10 gigabytes of space. But this was a 146 gig drive. So 10 gigabytes really isn't that much, and all it's on here is Windows. So something else was taking up some space. So I used Tree Size Free. It's a utility. This one is free. There's a paid version. But Tree Size Free, I ran that. And what I found was in this case, over 25 gigabytes of files in the C Windows temp directory. And all these files were about 300 megabytes in size, and they were
Wow.
spaced a few hours apart.
Uh-oh.
So something's creating 300 megabyte temp files every couple of hours, and it filled up the C drive. So I tried to delete them because they're just temp files, and it said they were locked. So I thought, well, that's strange. So I rebooted the server. I was able to delete them. No problem. I said, well, okay, seems fixed.
You're
So
like, you're like, end of a good day, and then you went home, right?
Oh, wait, this is a Saturday morning.
Okay.
No, I usually don't do things on Saturday morning, but I figured, oh, they have the voicemail in my office. My voicemail goes to my phone. It goes, so I heard about it. So I said, well, I'm going to avoid a Monday morning issue, and I'm just going to do it now. No, I didn't tell the customer I did it. I just did it. And I was going to call them Monday morning. So I logged in Monday morning, and there was another 20 gigabytes of temp files again. And I thought, boy, what is going on? So I tried to delete them, couldn't delete them. And of course, it just says file locked. You don't usually know what's locking it. But I found that if you use Process Explorer to utility, just do a search for Process Explorer. It's free from sysinternals, or I guess now from Microsoft.
Awesome tool.
There's a way. What I did was I ran Process Explorer, and in the Find menu, it says Find, Handle, or DLL is the menu item.
Mm-hmm.
I entered in the name of one of the temp files, and it just showed me the process that had it locked. In this case, it was the Trend Micro antivirus service.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
So now I know Trend Micro is creating 300 megabyte temp files every couple of hours. So I just had to look into why that was happening. And in this particular version of Trend Micro, there's a known issue where it tries to download all the updates for the definitions, and then for some reason it fails at the very end. And guess what? That's about 300 megs. So
Wow.
it just keeps trying to download them, trying to download them. So they should have known this, but I guess they didn't put it together. Their internet had been slow for about a week.
Just
Because it's
constantly download.
That's right. It's constantly
Freaking
downloading.
Trend Micro. I know you like it, but
I don't. Well, okay. Well, like is a strong term.
Like is a strong term.
It's one of the better ones that I've used.
right. Okay.
So, I think I may switch to Sophos, but I've got to test that somewhere first
Right.
before I use that. But this was an older version of Trend Micro. It was documented on Trend Micro's site. Now, unfortunately, the fix was to upgrade to Service Pack 3 for that version, and they already had Service Pack 3. So while it was documented, it wasn't accurate as to how to fix it.
Uh-huh.
So all I did was uninstall Trend Micro and then load the new version, and it's been fine.
Okay.
But two cool tools if you need them: Tree Size Free and Process Explorer can come in handy.
Yeah, and if you haven't checked out the sysinternals suite, it's on Microsoft site. I use them all the time.
It's free, right?
Yeah.
Can't argue with that price.
Nope.
Awesome.
So that could have been a long process,
Yeah.
because you keep rebooting it. But and then of course this particular person who is the point of contact over there.
Mary.
She's omnipresent.
That's close. She's one of the ones who likes to do things herself. So she didn't tell me this has been going on for a while, but I suspect that it has. Because when I mentioned the files in C Windows Temp, she kind of seemed like she had deleted them before.
You mean she went and did it?
Yeah, I mean, she's okay on the server,
Right.
She gets on a lot to do things herself. They don't call us unless they need to. And I think when I told her what I found, she didn't sound very surprised that I had to delete those files from the temp folder.
Interesting.
So just tracking them down is the key. And once you track down the process, you can see why they're being created.
No, that was key. Good thinking with Process Explorer.
So, and that's all I have, unless you got some emails or.
We don't have any emails.
What?
We do
Didn't I
not
send you-
have any emails.
I know I sent you an email. Didn't I send you an
Yeah.
email?
Matt did.
Let me see. All right, let me dig it up.
If not, I can read it from my Droid.
No, I can read it. All right, let me see. I just stopped the recording for a sec. All right. What was it about?
It was asking about.
Oh, 2 questions. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they sent it. It looks like they must have sent it to you. Yeah, they sent it to you. Good. Okay.
Yeah. If I get those direct to me, I'll just forward them to you so you can read
That's
them.
cool. I didn't check my emails from when did you send it?
Today.
Okay. Didn't check my emails yet.
A couple of hours ago.
All right, here we go. I'll start the recording again. Oh, yes, we do have an email. What do you know? It says,
Really?
it says, hey, Matt, I first wanted to write and tell you how much I love the show. I'm working on getting a residential computer repair business off the ground. Listening to your show has made me want to work in the small business end. I feel I know enough for the residential end of things, but your podcast has been my first look into supporting businesses. I don't want to get into an office and screw up their whole setup. Would you recommend someone with no small business experience work for someone that supports small businesses before getting into it on my own? Or can I get there just by studying for small business and working residential? My other question is, what do you use to keep track of all your work logs? It seems pretty important. I want to start doing it right from the start. Thank you again for your amazing contribution to the community. That's from Joseph. Thanks, Joseph. What do you say, Matt? And Lala?
Okay, well, yeah. So what I would say is, if you're familiar with the residential side, I think you should use small business in your company. So install it, use it, and that's how you can get familiar with it, by using it in your own business.
Didn't you? You did talk about this before. What do you get? TechNet and run it in VM once you get that, or how do you do? How would you suggest
I wouldn't even
it?
do it. I mean, I would. You can be we have the partner, the Action Pack.
Yeah.
As a partner, anybody can sign up to be a Microsoft registered partner, and you can get the Action Pack, and you're going to get, I think, licenses for server, Office, Windows, and you can use that in your business.
Okay.
But with that, you'll get Small Business Server. So I would just use Small Business Server, get a server, run it, have yourself a domain, use Exchange server, just set it all up and use it in your network.
Yeah, that's smart.
That's the best way to get familiar with it. Now, I wouldn't go into businesses and try and support them if you're not familiar with it already. I would say load it, get familiar with it, get the books, and by doing that, you're going to get familiar with it. If you go in to try and support a business and you don't know what you're doing, it's bad for the business, but worse, it's bad for your reputation. Because if you go in and do a bad job or mess something up, you won't not only will not get referrals, but now you're going to have bad word of mouth.
Right. It's not a good idea. I really like your idea of setting it up for yourself, because you could even, here's what I would do anyway. I would set it up for myself, get it running, become familiar with it, but then I wouldn't know how to break it. I wouldn't know what the problems are that people are going to call me about. So I would just start after I'm familiar enough with the product, and I said, again, this is just what I would do. I would put an ad out or start putting my advertising out that I support small businesses and promote to them. They'll call me and say, yeah, I'm having this problem, blah, blah, blah. And then I would try to duplicate that problem on my machine and fix it. You know what I mean? At least you have something in there that you could work, something of your own you could work on to practice before you go out and do a job. But he also asked, should he work for somebody who supports small business? I mean, I guess that all depends on if you really want to do that or not, really want to work for somebody like that.
Right, and I definitely agree with Matt. If this is something that you want to do, you want to definitely put your hands on it. Even I'm real big on the virtual environment, especially if I can't afford to have a box and to be a server. There's plenty of books that will give you practice exercises, as mundane as they may be. They will show you how to correctly do something. It'll give you the foundation on how DHCP works, on how DNS works. So when you troubleshoot something, at least you know how it should look like.
Right.
These problems, you won't get to know how to do them until you face them. I mean, that's just what the reality is.
That's what I'm saying. If you have at least set up on your end, you can at least find out what their problem is and then try to duplicate it on your end. I mean, I learned a lot of stuff residential on the fly, but it's like you guys said, you don't want to create a bad situation with a small business and create bad word of mouth, but you're going to have to learn a lot of stuff on the fly.
Right. Or if you have a friend that has a small business, or I used to hire interns that all they wanted to do was to learn more about the a networking side. So I would take one and I would explain to them what I do. If you can shadow someone, I mean, that
would be key.
an awesome experience.
Yeah.
But again, if you go to most companies and say, I want to intern, you're not getting paid for it. It takes up your time. But I guarantee the information that you learn is invaluable.
Good.
Right,
Good
if you
tip.
can get it.
Good tip.
If you can get it.
Right, if you can get it. But these days, I mean, think about it. The IT departments are getting smaller. So if you are an individual that wants to learn, I mean, I always gave folks a chance for interns that was eager to know how to learn. And you know, now granted, I'm not gonna have that person touch a lot of stuff or actually do something,
Right.
but at least you know that was my way of giving back. So.
Yeah, they could shadow you.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Good stuff.
But when you're setting this up for yourself, though, actually use it. I mean, set up
Right.
Exchange
Yes.
server. You know, use Outlook. You know, use the small business server the way it's supposed to be used. Don't keep using some kind of, you know, Gmail web client. You set up Exchange. Set up your DNS records. Set up your MX records. In that way, you know how it's supposed to work.
Right.
So when you go in and things aren't working, you say, okay, well, this should be like this. This should be like this. This should be like this. And if it's not, well, you kind of know where to start.
Right.
Now, another benefit of having that action pack in a Microsoft partner status is you've got Microsoft partner support. So meaning I have a Microsoft partner only forum that I can get into, and I've got a Microsoft business critical down phone number that I can call. So if you do get stuck, you can use those resources to help you get through it.
Gotcha.
And again, and I also go back on, I think that someone had commented on the chat room. Certifications, certifications are key. If you the information that you get from a certification, I mean, it just takes you a long way because it goes over all these things: how a server runs, how you set up a server, a different service. That's how I learned, and I went through certifications in a virtual environment, and then eventually, you know, I just picked it up.
Hey, and I've asked that question before to a lot of guys who have certs, and they say the question comes up: should you get certs for your job? And I asked him, is the information that you learn in the training a good thing, or are you just doing this to get the cert because you need the cert for a job? Like, do you actually learn through going through the training?
It gave me
And
the foundation.
Yeah, well, that's good. You answered the question.
Again, and I tell people, if you are certified, you're not going to walk into a job and they're going to say, praise you because you are certified and we're going to pay you $70,000. That's not what's going to happen. If you're going to get the certification expecting that, you're wrong.
Well,
But
it's going to get your foot in the door?
it will give you a foundation of knowledge, and it will get in the foot in the door. Much like how my college and degree, it got me my foot in the door for the job interview. Then at that point, it was up to me. But they asked for my certification. So some jobs will and some jobs won't. Like the last job that I had, didn't care what I had. They just knew that I could fix stuff. So they were like, go at it.
And it's easy to tell when you're interviewing somebody or if you're being interviewed. If somebody comes in with an MCSE, you know, I used to have an MCSE for Windows 2000. And, you know, if you got a certification like that and you ask somebody, what's a service record? And they have a blank face. You know what? They learned it for the test, but they don't know what a service record is.
Exactly.
So if you ask them something they should know if they're an MCSE, they should be able to answer pretty quickly.
Gotcha.
So
Good
if you're going to have the certs, make sure you understand it, or be upfront. Say, yeah, I got certifications, but I need some real world experience to help submit my knowledge. You know, be upfront about it. That way, okay, well, yeah, this guy, he learned, he's capable of learning, and he understands he doesn't know everything. So, you know, be upfront about it. Now, we also asked about the work order logs that we use.
Oh yeah.
You know, we're I can't say big company, but you know, there's 7 of us that go on calls. So we've been using Trackit from Numera software, but we are about to switch to ConnectWise. Now, again, it's a pretty big investment, so it's not for a small business. We've been in business since '95, and we're just now going to ConnectWise, and we've only been having Trackit for 3 or 4 years. Before that, we use something called TEAK, which is Time Expense Automobile Keeper. I'm not sure they make that anymore. But these solutions that we've been using, they're for more established companies that can make an investment into this kind of software.
That you mean they're expensive?
Well, yeah.
Okay, nicely put.
Yeah.
How much are they?
Yeah. A Trackit, I think, was I want to say it was about 3 or 4,000.
Okay.
And then the maintenance fees were about 1,200 a year. ConnectWise is, I'll say, significantly more expensive.
Wow. Damn.
So, kind of like thing if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
Right.
I mean,
right.
it was a hard decision for us to justify the expense, but in the end, there's a lot of us. It has features that we think can help capture more billable time. So for us, I think it's going to be worth it, but it's very expensive. I mean,
Damn.
you can buy cars for less. So
Damn. Buy a nice car, Matt.
There you go.
All right. Anything else, Matt? Any other emails that you sent me that I missed?
Nope. I think. I got a lot of people emailing me about the domain admin password
Yes.
reset script. Now, I've had an issue where if your mail's hosted by Gmail, I can't email it to you because Gmail blocks it. They do some scanning, and the scripts that I email, even though they're in a zip file, they scan those and said, no, this is a dangerous script. We're not going to allow it.
Even if you rename the script to dot, it's a zip file.
Oh yeah, because it's looking inside that zip file,
Okay.
and it's looking at the scripts inside the zip file. But I fixed that. So if you email me, I can easily email you a link to download it without sending you the actual script. So if you email me, matt@podnutz.com, I can just email you the link of where I stashed it, and you can download it.
Yes, and I'm in the process of building a virtual machine so I can record like a video, and we'll put it up on Podnutz, just showing the whole process. So
Damn. Sweet.
Cool.
All right, guys. Anything else we need to go over before we end off?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, Matt.
Oh, let's see. I don't know if you want to go over this. Jerry Lambo has a question.
He did answer it. I saw that you said, "What's the question, Jerry?" And then we didn't see it.
Is that? I don't think that was from. Let's see.
He says, when I add a third router at 10.10.1.1, the chain breaks at that point. Why? Is that enough information for you to go on?
My router. Okay, let's see. My DSL router is dishing out. It is connected to a Linksys that has DHCP. Okay, well, first of all, if your DSL router is doing DHCP and your Linksys is doing DHCP, you need to put that DSL router in bridge mode. Because basically you're just creating a separate subnet.
Okay.
So I would either put the DSL router in bridge mode, which is going to give your Linksys a public IP. Right now, your Linksys is getting, for the WAN side, a 172 number, with your LAN side being 192.168. So, yeah, if you put the DSL router in bridge mode, your Linksys will get the public IP. Basically, it'll turn your DSL router into a modem only. Your public IP will get on your Linksys, and then when I add a third router, to the chain break. So how are we connecting the third router? Just plugging that into the Linksys?
Yeah. Jerry, we'll handle. I mean, there's a delay, so why don't we just handle it at the post show, in the post show?
But that's a good. Yeah. I'm just gonna say there's one topic though. If you have, we see this in business too. A business, somebody will have, they'll get a DSL modem from like Cox or not Cox, Bell South or whatever, and you have to put it in bridge mode because we want our router to handle all the traffic.
I see.
And a lot of times I'll actually request from them, don't send me a router, send me a modem only. That way, because if that DSL router gets reset for some reason, now it's not in bridge mode and it kind of messes things up.
I see. Good point. That's the way my router's set up here, actually. I got to take a look at that.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Good. Thanks for the question, Jerry.
All
right, Matt, where can people find you? They want to contact you.
They want to contact me, matt@podnutz.com, or on Twitter, which I'm still trying to use, Podnutz Pro on Twitter.
Okay. And Lalo, how about you?
Yo, you can go to betterpctech.com and check out the videos there. They're for a decent price, and I have a 30-day money back guarantee. I will give you your money back. I will probably hunt you down, but I will give you your money back.
He will give it to you personally.
I'll give it to you personally. I'm on Twitter, LaloNunez.com, DOTCOM, and also my site, LaloNunez.com. .com too.
No, your site is not that. Well,
No, well, it's actual. I know. I just confused everybody. My fault.
all right. We got you.
Cool.
Hey, also, if anybody wants to check out more Podnutz shows, we're doing Thursdays is Android App Addicts and Nuts at Night, starting at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to watch live, just go to podnutz.com at that time. We're right on the homepage. It's fun to watch live. You can join in the chat room and join the festivities. Other than that, thank you guys on the call, and thank everybody for watching, listening, streaming. That's going to be it for Podnutz Pro for tonight. See you next time.